Welcome to this episode of Chakmah Choter. This is the 11th part in our series, and we are now considering what the second to last prophet, Zechariah, had to say about the final witnesses. And it is an intriguing proposition that God has presented. And it's quite clear that in the years following the Shabuah harvest, on May 22nd of 2026, and especially between 2030 and 2033. Times are going to be horrific beyond our current comprehension. Mankind is going to continue to devolve towards the abyss. And at the end of it, fortunately, there will be a light for some, while eternal darkness for others. The decisions that you make now with the information which has been made available to you will ultimately determine the fate of your soul. I made a post on both X and Facebook just literally 15 minutes ago that may be the most deplorable presentation I have ever had to convey in terms of someone holding public office. And it is an analysis of what has happened with Donald Trump and family and company over the past 4 years. And what it presents is $16 billion worth of payoffs, investments, and loyalty, bribes to Donald Trump, his family, and his company, all from the Islamic despots promoting Islamic terrorism and the destruction of Israel. And to think that most of these announcements have transpired over the last 90 days. And that Donald Trump has arranged his first presidential visit at the cost of U.S. taxpayers to land and hold meetings with his new BFFs and business partners, the Qataris, the dictators over the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, where he has received all of these billions of dollars worth of payoffs. It's unconscionable. And yet, I understand that politics is like religion, and it doesn't matter what kind of evidence is presented, that the believers will continue to believe, and they will continue to condemn anyone who brings them information that's contrary to their beliefs. And I understand there's still a cadre of Israelis who think that Trump is their savior. But I'm here to tell you that I wouldn't really care that Trump and company have received $16 billion, and that's just the start of it, from the most disreputable characters on the planet. And that now in Air Force One, he is going to visit with them. But it's what's going to happen as a result. Part of this agenda will be to serve the heart of Israel up on a silver platter to MBS and Saudi Arabia and his other investors with the imposition of the two-state solution. It became rather obvious yesterday as the White House was all abuzz at condemning Israel for their lack of participation and their disappointment of Trump as he prepares to announce what he called the deal of the millennium. He prepares for his trip to go visit with his investors. It's going to lead to worldwide economic collapse. world war, the forfeiture of the heart of Israel, and the deaths of many millions of people. I wish I didn't have to be the bearer of bad news, but it is my job, and I thought you ought to know. I didn't mention in this expose that I wrote and posted on X and Facebook just moments ago, but I should just tell you for entertainment's sake, Trump, who decided that Air Force One was not up to his specifications, during his first term ordered not one but two brand new, larger, the last of the 747-800s, to be outfitted by Boeing to his specifications. Well, Boeing is a failed company at this point, and after 6 years of trying, they are still years away and billions of dollars in cost overruns, apart from being able to deliver those two airplanes. And Trump, he can't be seen traveling around in a shoddy Air Force One. And so he's arranged to take the personal carrier of the Qatari Emir, the 747. It's decked out already to his standards with this grand entry and foyer, 2-story entry and foyer, and then to all beautifully leather stitched sofas and thrones throughout, one more suitable to the Trump's over-the-top architectural style. And he has now sent that plane, gift from the Qataris, I assume, to a defense contractor to have it fitted out so that it can be carrying him by year's end. It's time that even the MAGAs wake up, that Israel wakes up and recognizes the kind of fit that we're in, the fix. America, the world, Israel, is now being run by a despot that is so unpredictable that no one has a clue what he's going to say one day to the next. No one who knows him or has to deal with him trusts him, and who is now owned and operated by the largest bidders. And they are despots. So that is where we're headed. And the prophets had even more to say about it, so we're going to return to them now. And so from one breath to the next, turning the page from the 4th to the 5th chapters of Zechariah, we go from the sons of the anointed standing aside the menorah, Yahweh's logo, and before Yahweh himself, to this statement. Then I turned, and I lifted my eyes, and I saw right there, flying, a scroll, or what he would have defined as such. Zechariah, memorable men of Yah, Zechariah 5:1. He said to me, this would be the spiritual messenger, the Malach, what do you see? I answered, I see a flying scroll. Its length is 20 cubits, which is about 30 feet. And its width, is 10 cubits, or about 15 feet. He said to me, this is the consequence of breaking the binding agreement. It is Zoth Allah, spelled with the Aleph, and therefore this is the curse of Allah and the sanctions for having invoked this recompense of God, which extends over the face of the earth. This is because everyone who takes away from this or deceives regarding it will be banished and forced to endure eternity elsewhere, while everyone who swears an oath of allegiance will also be swept away and banished. Zechariah. Remember Yahweh. 5:2 and 5:3. You have any idea what God, through his spiritual messenger, conveyed to Zechariah, his second to last prophet? Because nothing like this exists at any other time. I mean, just as we know that the Choter is unique and that he was not only foretold by David writing an entire mashal, a word picture, the 14th proverb to him, but that he was also heralded by Yeshayah, devoting an entire chapter, the 11th, to him and his spiritual accompaniment of seven spirits of Yahweh. You know, we are told in Yeshayah's account that the seven spirits of Yahweh are going to assist the Choter in writing this nesh, this giant banner, the scroll. And when we put those things together and we look at what we have just read, and you say right there, what do you see? A flying scroll, this giant banner. What do you think it's comprised of? He says, okay, it's big. It's in the sky. It's going to be above the Temple Mount, which has been cleansed of the scar of Islamic oppression and subjugation, the mosque of hideous rage and death. Going to have a replica of the tent of the witness there, and of course the booming voices of two very entertaining men, Yada and Elia. And they will not be alone. As we learned in the last chapter of Zechariah, these two witnesses will be standing before Yahweh. And what is Yahweh going to do? He is going to have this enormous banner, this nesh, the scroll, above them. You see, this is going to be must-see TV, if you will, although it'll be broadcast in the cesspool of X and the wonderful confines of Facebook. And I do have some good news. I was told that our primary Yada Yahweh YouTube channel, the one that is managed by our good friend and covenant member, Stephen, has recorded, I think it's 10,000 views over this very short period of time. And that is encouraging. And so there's every bit the likelihood that what Yahweh is describing here, considering his witnesses and considering what he said, he says this is the consequence of breaking the binding agreement. He didn't say it's the Torah, did he? I mean, that your natural inclination is for the scroll he's gonna have the Torah up there, but he doesn't say that. If that's what it was going to be, I can tell you God would have said it. If it was going to be the text of his prophets, he would have said, this is flying above them is the scroll of Yeshayah or Zechariah, or of course of the Torah of Moshe. But he doesn't say that. So it is something else that is being presented there by Yahweh miraculously above his two witnesses, which are standing before him and are on either side of a magnificent menorah, God's logo. And this is the consequence of breaking the binding agreement. And the term that was used isn't Bereth. It's Allah. Well, I know a fella that knows a little bit about Allah. He wrote 5 volumes to prove that Allah is Satan, that the Quran is demonic, that it's Satan's quest to obliterate humanity, genocide and apartheid on the entire human race. Those not under apartheid will be subject to genocide. It's the purpose of the Quran. It's Allah's goal. Yeah, he's happy to be dazzled, no doubt, to be worshipped as if he were God. Allahu Akbar, greater than Yahweh. Consistent with Yeshaya's writing in the 14th chapter of Isaiah. But men irritate him. That's why he spends all of his time torturing them in hell. That's why he recognizes how easy they are to bribe with taunts of, oh yeah, you go kill for me and you can have multiple virgins. Yeah. Allah has no respect for men. And so men worshiping him, as Muslims stupidly do, bores the living crap out of him. He hates it, really, down deep. He thinks he's way too cool, way too important to be worshipped by the likes of men. Men are just someone to be used to go kill for him. You see, what Satan's real goal is to kill everybody, including Jews. Because if there's no one left on the planet, there's no reason for Yahweh to return. And if Yahweh and don't return on Yom Kippurim, then Satan wins. He keeps the planet. There's no reason for Yahweh to banish him to Sheol. He's got his own hell right here. And therefore, when we read that this is the curse of Allah, sanctions for having invoked the recompense of God, the first thing that should come to mind is it is Muslims who will be repurposing what they accomplished and learned on October 7th. But according to the prophets, in the range of 1,000-fold. And that they will be so abusive to Israel while screaming Allahu Akbar, raping Jews, torturing children, abducting grandmas. I mean, they're going to be murderous and savage. And so it is essential that what God does at this time is he, as Yahweh, says, hey, that Allah's nothing but a snake. He's Satan. And I'm going to show you proof. And that a significant part of what's in that scroll can currently be found in Goddamn Religion, the 5 volumes that I have written at Yahweh's request. It would certainly explain why it had to be the first thing that Yahweh asked me to do when our relationship began 24 years ago. To write Prophet of Doom, which has become Goddamn Religion. And of course, that's not the only curse that we need to expose and condemn, because it's the curse of Christianity that has precluded Israelites, Yehudim, Jews, over the many, many centuries of recognizing that David is the one who told us that he would be crucified to fulfill Passover, and that he would fulfill matzah, and even told us that I will do so during Chakmah Choter in 33 CE, 700 years in advance of him doing it, and 1,000 years in advance of him being crucified, explaining how he would suffer under crucifixion. And the first 30 Psalms, which explicitly say that Daud volunteered to serve in this way as our Savior. And it's Christianity that robbed everyone of what Dowd has achieved by promoting a crude counterfeit through identity theft. And then Jews followed suit by promoting a false messiah of their own, Bar Kokhba. And so Christianity will be part of this as well. And you might say, wait a minute, this is the time to call Jews home, and you're telling me that you think that on this scroll, you're going to have the consequence of breaking the binding agreement? Yeah, I am saying that, because Yahweh said that. It is one of the great travesties that Jews, Christians, Muslims, all of whom claim that the Torah, prophets, and Psalms were inspired by their God and therefore Scripture. I don't like the term Scripture, but that's how they would term them. Have as their dominant theme, the number one theme throughout the Torah, the prophets, the Psalms, the writings, overwhelming, beyond anything else by a huge margin, is God's disdain for religion. And yet you have religions that claim that they were based upon these texts where God says, I hate religion. I hate the religious. I am estranged from my people because they want to be religious. And therefore, it is appropriate for God at this time, when Israel is being besieged by religion and being raped and plundered and tortured and terrorized as a result of religion, to speak out first and foremost against religion. So if that he's seeing the scroll as it is first brought up, wouldn't it only be natural for it to begin where Yahweh asked me to begin, which was exposing and condemning Islam, since it is Muslims that are inundating Israel and creating all of this havoc? Well, the answer is, of course. That is the reasonable conclusion. That's why this says this will be the curse of Allah, the consequence of breaking the binding agreement. And I don't think it's all going to be written because, well, quite frankly, most people don't read anymore. In fact, the whole reason we're doing this Yahweh blog is because it's so difficult to get people to read. I just posted, as I said, an article, my analysis of Trump's criminal enterprise, and it's probably the equivalent of 4 pages of text long, and anything beyond about 10 words, people won't read. So we have the Iowa blog because they will listen. And that is likely why that on this banner, this scroll, this thing in the sky that is 30 feet by 15 feet, nice aspect ratio for to play the Yahweh blog, isn't it? We're about that same aspect ratio, aren't we? To play these programs so that the world gets to hear Islam, and Allah and Muhammad, Christianity, Peter and Paul denounced. I think that is likely where it begins. And then once we've cleared the way of religious rubbish, then as witnesses who know and love Yahweh, we'll take it from there. And God said that this breach of the agreement, this curse of Allah, now extends over the face of the entire earth. Never before in all of human history has there been such rage worldwide against one people in tiny little place. people representing 0.2% of the world's population, and not even a tiny fraction of that of the world's landmass. But it is if the worldwide propaganda machine by Muslims and their progressive pimps were readied, aware of what was going to happen on October 7th, with Muslims invading Israel, torturing children, raping little girls, abducting women, abducting grandparents, committing acts of mass murder viciously while screaming Allahu Akbar. That as that was transpiring, the world's propaganda machine, led by progressive pimps of Islam, began this worldwide and systematic rage against the victims. Never has there been anything like this in human history, where the victims of the most savage massacre ever to be witnessed are vilified as if they were the perpetrators. Now, I begged Israel in my open letter to Israel, written on October 7th of 23, not to invade Gaza. I said, if you invade Gaza and try to resolve this with bullets and bombs, you will make more Islamic terrorists and make a bad situation worse, and you'll turn the world against you. And that is precisely what has happened. The invasion of Gaza has been counterproductive, and every image of a bloodied child and blown up building, or the panorama of nothing but blown up buildings, all it has done is brought out the simmering anti-Semitism that has been there all along, but bringing it to the surface. And so there is a worldwide rage, first time ever, against the only people God cares about, Jews. This wasn't possible until the aftermath of 10/7. It wasn't possible until after our collaborative effort of writing Goddamn Religion and Twistianity, even of Babel. But it is now. And of course, it was not possible until Yahweh said, I want you to transition from writing to speaking, because that's what's going to play on that banner. That is why we returned to the Rainbow Room yesterday, began the series on Twistianity after having done 20, 30 programs exposing and condemning Islam, Muhammad, Allah, and the Quran. The spiritual messenger speaking for Yahweh to his second to last prophet continued to say, this is because everyone who takes away from this or deceives regarding it, who removes any aspect of what it says and offers to the rightful owners, trying to outwit their heirs or cheat them of their father's garden. It is from Gan, garden, and Ab, father. Ha, Ganab, men, ze, Kamal, you. The purpose of the rebellion is to preclude a remnant of Yisrael from entering the garden to celebrate Sukkah, which is the culmination of God's plans and the culmination of the Moed Mikre. We have the Shabuah harvest, which is followed by the Teruah ingathering, which is followed by the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah to cleanse the adulterous woman of Yisrael, which is followed by the return of the groom, Messiah, King, Dode with Yahweh on Yom Kippurim, also that we can re-enter the garden on Sukkah, the most 15 amazing days that will ever be witnessed by humankind, the greatest show on earth, as all of this transpires. And it's all to take us back to the garden. And this scroll, this scrolling banner, is going to be risen because far too many people have tried to chip away at this. have deceived regarding it, have tried to outwit the heirs and steal their inheritance. But what it says that as a result of what's on this scrolling banner, that those who have been deceptive, who have tried to preclude our return to the garden, they're going to be banished. They're going to endure their eternity elsewhere. And so that which is being displayed on this is condemning of religion. That is the only reasonable conclusion based upon these facts. Everyone who swears an oath of allegiance will also be swept away and banished. Yes. If you swear an oath of allegiance to Roman Catholicism, to Orthodox Christianity, to Islam and any of its strains, to progressives, socialists, and communists, our dear country is a patriot, to your military, you're going to be among those swept away. There'll be no patriots, no one who is religious, no one who is overtly political, no soldiers, no jihadists, no conspiratorialists allowed into the garden. God's going to sweep away the trash. So, coterminous with the arrival of the two witnesses, Yahweh is going to reveal for all to see, to read, to listen to witness, an uplifting of the Choter's Nesh banner, just as was promised in Yeshaya, Isaiah 11. And throughout the prophecies conveyed in Isaiah. And accompanied by God's explicit endorsement while miraculously held aloft, there will be no excuses. Passing God's test for covenant participation is not going to be all that difficult because it remains open book. Because after we have exposed and condemned Christianity and Islam and conspiracy and progressives with this scrolling banner, then we're going to share the terms and conditions of the covenant, the means that the Moed Mikre provide to enable it, the expose on Yahweh's name, a reintroduction to Dod as our Savior, King, Messiah, the Son of God. It's all going to be there for you. So there'll be no excuses. The only difficulty is if you're listening to this and you aren't yet prepared to accept the truth and you still want to cling to your political or religious or conspiratorial lies, then the likelihood of you making it to this point where you have this opportunity, slim. Plus, why wait? Not only you're risking your soul to wait, think of what you could do that would have value between now and then if you were to make your decision now and join us and to be part of conveying this to Israelis and Jews and even Goyim around the world. How many people could we collectively protect and inspire if we work together, as opposed to you saying, no, I'm going to wait till the last minute. And if you're not convinced now, even though the evidence is overwhelming from God, why do you think you're going to be convinced later? If you're not willing to invest the time to learn now, what do you think is going to change when the world becomes almost impossible to survive, or you have to use every waking moment just to make it to the next moment? This is actually the lull before the storm. Well, these things known, we must expect the worst. God's word will be no more popular tomorrow than it is today. The secular and sectarian will lash out against it, demanding and that it be taken down, degrading it, demeaning it. Many will seek to negate its promises to God's people. Others, like the New Testament Christian or Talmud-toting Jews, will claim that they've had the right to change it. And so by doing this, they will have earned their fate. Of course, the United Nations will now, no doubt, call the scroll a violation of international law, and they will denounce Yahweh's occupation of the skies above Al-Haram al-Sharif. The Haredi rabbis will insist that Hashem is in violation of the Talmud for having entered the sacred Temple Mount without the requisite approvals and the ashes of a red heifer. Christians will call it a sign of the apocalypse, and they'll blame the Antichrist for the affront to their faith. Jordan will no doubt lodge a formal complaint, insisting that the site is under Hashemite control and that God is changing the status quo. And at the very least, we should expect 100,000 screaming progressives from Tel Aviv to block access to the Mount, adamant that the scroll is undemocratic. Each week that it flies in the skies above the city, the Jerusalem Post will publish a popularity poll condemning that if elections were held today, G-D would lack the votes to form a coalition. The High Court will, of course, forbid it as unreasonable. Elsewhere, someone will protest that its presence is exacerbating climate change. And the conspiratorialists will shriek that it's a nefarious Jewish plot to control the world by eradicating Gentiles through a UFO. So at least someone will be partially right. The two witnesses will find it reassuring, as will those who listen to them. So it will have its intended effect, at least on the few. It will inspire those seeking to know Yahweh and leave those who prefer religion and politics muttering nonsensical platitudes. So this next line affirms that God will be engaged in support of the witnesses. After, an absence of 2,700 years, that he's going to be active again in the lives of his people. And this is only because the work of Yada and Elia, collaboratively with the Spirit of Yahweh, will have convinced enough Yehudim in Yisrael to listen to God, that God can return and engage on their behalf. Just because everyone, or most everyone, is still opposed to him and still religious and political, the very fact that there will be a sizable number of people, thousands, who will have returned to Yahweh, embracing Yahweh's name, accepting Dod as their Messiah and King, responding to the terms of the Berith covenant, attending the Moed Mikre as intended. God is now in a position, for the first time in 2,700 years, to return on behalf of his family. And he will. He is committing, after these 27 centuries, to extending this scroll, this banner, drawing his people out of harm's way via another exodus. Well, this one's not geographic. It's from the confounding confusion of intermixing religion and politics through the Babel of Babylon. And he will repeat what he had done, at least symbolically, 3,478 years previously. Isn't it amazing that what I'm sharing with you now is all spelled out? All of this has been available for anywhere from 2,500 to 3,500 years. All we had to do is read it, translate it correctly, completely, and then contemplate its intent, placing it within the proper context of God's plans. Yahweh speaking, and he says, I will contribute to it, and I will extend it. Well, once again, we know that it cannot be the Torah and the prophets, because Yahweh didn't contribute to the Torah and prophets. He is the very essence of the Torah and prophets. But Yahweh did contribute not only to the 35 books that are part of the Yadayah library, but also to the Yahweh blog. And so he has contributed to it. That was the whole purpose of getting the Choter, the 7 Ruach of Yahweh. And it's why he promised through the prophet Yashayah that it would be extended by his efforts lifting up this Nesh scrolling banner. I will contribute to it. I will extend it, prophetically declares Yahweh in advance of it occurring, of the vast array of spiritual messengers, the Saba. Then it will come upon the house of the deceiver and thief, and the house of the one who swears an oath of allegiance in my name, using my reputation, which is deceptive and misleading. And then it will remain in the midst of this house and consume it from the timbers to the stones. Zechariah 5:4. Once again, the scroll, this banner that is scrolling, that the Malach, spiritual messenger of Yahweh, said would be placed above the witnesses who are standing before Yahweh in the end of days, that is there to expose and condemn the breach of the agreement, particularly the rise of Allah-inspired Muslims to wreak havoc throughout Israel. That Yahweh not only contributed to it, and it's not only doing as he promised and uplifting it, that it's going to come to expose, deliberately expose, coming upon the house of the deceiver and thief. It will also expose those who have sworn an oath of allegiance, which is essential in Islam. They all swore an oath to Allah. It's called the Pledge of Aqaba. It's the preeminent event in Islam's creation. It's day 1, month 1, year 1 of the Islamic era, when all Muslims pledge to wage war against all mankind. That's the oath of Islam. And they will be doing so in great numbers, probably in the range of 5 or 6 million of them, trying to burn down Israel. And over their houses and over those who have deceived to motivate them to act so savagely, as well as the progressives that have served as their pimps. All of this, God's going to expose, he's going to condemn. And everyone who has claimed that they have spoken in his name, but did not have his authorization to do so, which is one of the reasons why Yahweh provides many hundreds of prophecies authorizing the Choter, the Nakri, his Kol voice, his son's Bashar herald, Yada, is to distinguish him from all of those who are unauthorized to speak for him. So if anyone is claiming to speak in Yahweh's name, and they are not amongst the 2 who are authorized at this time to speak in Yahweh's name, or they're not among the covenant members who are supporting the effort of these 2, then Yahweh's fury is going to be over their houses. It's going to expose them, and it is going to remain over those houses and consume them, totally destroying them from the timbers, which would be the roof and the rafters, all the way down to the stone foundation. So there's nothing left. This is not the time to try to talk people out of being religious. This is not the time to try to persuade people that they should not be political. I can do that now. And I am for the sake of Israel, because I have to talk Israel off of the ledge of politics and religion so that they're in a position to accept who Yahweh is and what he is offering. And we will begin our efforts, rejoin them with Yisrael when Elia and I return to Jerusalem in 2030, 4th of April. But ultimately, God's not interested in us reaching out to those who have deceived, to those who have sworn their oaths against Israel, or in the name of Yahweh when they were not authorized. Going to burn them to the ground. Be nothing left, from the timbers to the stones. Now, that also means that if there were any mosques, churches, monasteries, anything of a religious nature or a military nature in Israel at this moment, they will be destroyed. There will be absolutely no trace of any edifice that is religious. A synagogue, a temple, a shrine, a church, a mosque, all of them, monasteries, they're all gone. Nothing left. Timbers to stones. Now, I am actually encouraged by the juxtaposition of the words and images on the scroll that Yahweh has extended, and how it will impact the deceivers of this day, particularly those who have pilfered the things that belong to the covenant family, and especially to our God and King, including his beloved name, the name of his beloved Son, and his land, which they will be still trying to steal. The religious, political, and conspiratorial falsely claim to speak in the name and reputation of God while deceiving and misleading many. And so the state houses, houses of worship, and social media edifices they have built will be destroyed. From timbers to stones, roofs, the foundations. My hope is, and this is something that God can very easily work around, but I'm hoping that Facebook continues to be supportive, and that Elon Musk wakes up and he resolves the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic vibe of X and calls off his thought police. And that YouTube becomes more reliable. And that these platforms can be used by the covenant family and by those of us teaching the neophytes in the covenant family, this remnant of the children of Israel, and that we can use these kinds of platforms to convey this message by a continuation of the Yahweh blog. So I'm hoping that they come around. And if they don't, we're going to have the Yahweh social. Covenant social, if you will. Now, early on, Yahweh told all who would listen that those who curse Yisrael will be cursed in return. Quid pro quo. So this is God doing exactly what he has promised, and he is doing what fathers must do. He's protecting his children as they are being assaulted. Now, it's telling that with nearly 2 billion Muslims hell-bent on killing Jews while invading Israel, that they will be cursed as a result of their belief in the curse of Allah. Having reordered the Quran chronologically, as I have done, and setting it into the context of Muhammad's putrid life, as I have done, as that was revealed through the Hadith, I was able to prove that Allah is, in fact, Satan. In fact, it's obvious. And I made this result all the more apropos. Of great importance, we should expect a literal fulfillment of these prophecies, and thus, with the arrival of the two witnesses in Abib 2030, the 4th of April of that year, either an enormous copy of things that I have written as part of the Yada Yawa series. I think it will begin with Goddamn Religion and then Twistianity, and then go through an introduction to God, Yada Yawa, introduction, observations, and coming home. And that presentation will be both words and video, and that the Yawa blog will be the highlight of it. I think it's the whole reason we've been asked to do this. I think it is the time when everything we have collaborated on for the past 24 years, and at that point it will be 29 to 32 years, comes to fruition. The reason for it's all, it's the benefit of it's all. It's God using what we have done collaboratively. That's why we had to change the symbol on our books to the menorah, because the menorah stands in the center of all of this. And I don't want to in any way infer that Elia is therefore not as important because it isn't Eliah's books or blog that is being presented. Because quite frankly, Elia was a prophet that was exceedingly unique amongst the most important prophets of Yah. How was Elia so different, do you know, than Malachi, Zechariah, Yoel, Yashaya, Yirmiah, Hosea, Moshe? How was he so different than the others? And he is. We have nothing that he wrote in his own hand. There is no book of prophecies penned by Elia. As a matter of fact, Elia is a prophet because he spoke for God in condemning religion and politics. He's not a prophet because he predicted the future. And so Elia is the perfect man to orchestrate all of this and to say, see what this says? Let me introduce it for you. He will introduce it. He will explain it. He will have fun with it. He will poke fun at me. We're going to have a good time. But Yahweh has inspired more writing and obviously video presentations through me than, well, all of his prophets combined. We have a wealth of material that he's going to use, and he's going to use it well. And Elia is going to be the master of ceremonies who introduces it, who expounds upon it, who makes it relevant to God's people. Elia is the most credible person that could possibly be there, because Jews are accustomed to dismissing Moshe. They were really good at it. They treated Moshe like absolute crap. And so there's no way that Jews are going to respond favorably and say, hey, well, there's Moshe, we better listen. No. When Moshe was there with them, they absolutely, totally, and completely abused him all the time, 24/7. And look what they've done to Dode. They not only revolted against them, but they've denied him, they've replaced him. They trashed Dode's reputation. Dod's not going to get their attention. Not at this time. He will later. Yahshua said, I've spent my life revealing the truth about Yahweh, and Yahweh opens the door for me to see those who had embraced what I have said and looking to be part of the covenant and enter heaven, and there was no one there. And then he said, not only was there no one there, God looked for centuries upon centuries after I had devoted all of this to writing, dedicated it all to these scrolls, and there was still no one there. That's why Yahshua is so excited that the man from Edom finally arose and that he's there to explain what Yahweh revealed through Yahshua so long ago. So they're not going to be impressed with Yahshua. They didn't listen to him in his life. They tried to kill Yirmiah. So it's not him either, is it? There's no indication there was a single prophet that was well respected. But there is one person that Jews to this day anticipate his return and esteem. One. And it's only because they don't understand what he did, which was he became famous for exposing and condemning religion and politics. But that aside, they're looking forward to the return of Eliah. Eliah is the ultimate credibility enhancer. If you want to awaken Yisrael, I can write all these books. I can do the Yahweh blogs. I can be passionate about what I've come to know and share it with you with every ounce of enthusiasm that I have, filled with Yahweh's Ruach spirit. But Eliah stands alone in terms of credibility. Yehudim will listen to Eliah, which is why he's the perfect accoutrement to all of this. And he's going to follow it all the way to the end, because in the end, it's Eliah that's orchestrating the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, just as he did 2,888 years prior. And so there we have it. That's what's going to happen. It will be literally fulfilled. You're going to witness the Yahweh blog, and it will be co-hosted. Now, I love my friend Captain Kirk. I'm very, very fond of Kevin and all he has contributed. And here, this program is being produced by Richard. Normally, it is produced by my wife, Leah. Don't want to forget Wookie either. But when it comes to co-hosts, Eliah is the epitome of co-hosts. And that's what we're going to experience. The Yahweh blog will be displayed for all to see. And it will be broadcast, not only above the Temple Mount in Yisrael, but God is going to have his own special form of internet, his own special form of social media. And everyone that wants to see it will have access to see it. Right there. Black and white, full color, right and wrong, curses and benefits, all there for all to see. Now, having had some time to contemplate Yahweh's commitment to stretch out this banner that will scroll above the witnesses on the Temple Mount, I have compared this to his insistence, of course, that in mid-December, that he asked me to go from writing to talking to his people. And it is obvious that he was right, because not only is the spoken word more compelling than the text today, both combined, recorded and broadcast, making the Yahweh blog this ideal format to scroll above the Temple Mount, to garner everyone's undivided attention. Yeah, there'll be things to read, but there will be things to hear and to see. From a personal viewpoint and the here and now, from the perspective of one of Yahweh's witnesses, I have recently exposed a ganab, a deceiver, a thief hell-bent on misappropriating and counterfeiting my message, wearing me like a skin, performing an act of identity theft. And although her site, built by her enabler, has been taken down twice, she's a psychopath. She'll do everything she can to return. And in the process, of course, she has robbed those that have sworn their oath to her of the inheritance they once had by being active in the covenant. And she has even misrepresented Yahweh's name to mislead the unwary into believing that there is evidence for a spiritual mother in God's Shem, rewriting God's Shem to accommodate it, and doing so foolishly that the terms that she says, this is the sign of father, is actually feminine. This is the sign of mother, it's actually masculine. And so while all of this fits the one who is trying to counterfeit and misrepresent the Choter like a cheap glove, as we move through this prophecy, it will become evident that the Malach is actually indicting and addressing far bigger prey. So up to this point, there have been three potential outcomes for human souls: life with Yahweh, eternity in Sheol, or death, with those souls just ceasing to exist, no reward, no punishment. But at this point, it appears that there will be no middle ground. Everyone will be either deemed to be with Yahweh and his people or against them. And as such, anyone who attempts to discount the Torah, disapprove of the Bereth or Mikre or Dod or Yahweh, and denounce what belongs to Yisrael, they're going to be banished to an eternity in Sheol. The cost of dishonesty now, especially regarding Yahweh, will be a long stay in hell. Now, I want to slightly modify what I've just said. I still think there are three outcomes. But for souls, disembodied souls, if you will, the group that have been harvested, that have access to the seventh dimension in Yahweh through the Bereth covenant and the Mikre invitations to meet, and those souls who have been actively opposed to Yahweh and Yehudim and Dod, who are going to be sent into Sheol because of their religion, politics, and militarism and conspiracy. There is a third group still. But the third group is manifest differently at this time. And those are the Goyim workers of the long millennial celebration of the Sukkah Shabbat. Because the remnant of Israel is going to continue on this planet. And they're going to be mortal, although they'll be very long-lived. And they will be working with Yahweh, which means that all of the stuff that needs to be done, growing food, producing electricity, providing transportation, sanitation, all those kinds of things, has to be done by someone. And what Yahweh is going to do is going to say that if you're a Goyim and you were not overtly political and were not overtly religious, you were not anti-Semitic, you were not crazed with a conspiracy, and your attitude is decent, that rather than saying you have to go to one of these two destinations, since you can't go to Shamayim, it would be unfair to send you to Sheol. Those people, the fair outcome for them is they continue to live as the workers of the millennial Shabbat. I think that's the third group in this case. And it's the only way that God is ultimately fair. They've done nothing to deserve Sheol, and they've done nothing to earn Shamayim. So this is a much better outcome for everyone. And I think that's specifically what God's talking about. So the timing of up and down or no in between seems to coincide with the arrival of the two witnesses and the unfurling of this scrolling banner. And it is telling that the word of God will literally consume those who remain deceptive and it will be spoken by his witnesses. I'm going to share this statement, and then we're going to conclude this episode of the Yahweh blog. Then the spiritual messenger who had come forth to productively bring out and serve the one talking with me, he said to me, "You should choose to lift up your eyes and elevate your perspective, to be perceptive as a witness and perceive. Who is the one being brought forth? Why this has been extended? When and where this exodus is occurring? And even what is being produced through this process?" Zechariah, remember Yah and the memorable men of Yah, Zechariah 5:5. Boy, now that is a lot for us to sink our teeth into in our next program as we consider what this Malach is trying to convey to the second to the last prophet that is our responsibility now to unravel, so that we not only stand it, but we can share it with all who are interested in listening to Yahweh and being part of his covenant family. Thank you. I am Craig Wynn, and this has been the Yahweh blog.